Have you heard of the phrase, don't judge a book by its cover? Well, of course you have. We all have. But why do we have that phrase? Why do we judge things just from the outside without looking deeper inside? We're going to talk about that. Welcome to another episode of The Good, Bad, and Ugly of Business. I'm your host, Catryn Becker, and on this episode, we're going to talk to the most amazing people because that's what we do on this podcast. We want to learn what they've learned to make them so successful because we can avoid those mistakes or fail through them faster. My guest today has got an incredible story. She has lived many lives in her short life, but can tell us so many things that we can learn from that. She is Mrs. Italy World 2024, and she is an author. She is a TEDx speaker. She is a businesswoman. She has done it all, and I am so honored to have her here. So Celia Anzalone Bowers, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here chatting with you and talking deeply and having fun.
I love it. And, I think it's such an important thing that to do, to have those deep conversations. Like, I feel
Mhm.
like society as a whole, and when we kind of look at things on the outside, it can just be, the pretty filter, the
Mhm.
Instagram life where, it makes the picture really pretty, but like, what is all the junk that's been shoved to the side
Right.
that it doesn't make it in the frame?
Exactly. Yep.
Well, you come from the world of pageantry, but you didn't always do pageantry. So how did you
Mhm.
kind of get into that?
So it was 2021 and my history, I grew up, experienced a lot of trauma, and I used drugs to help ease the ache as a teenager. And because of my highly driven nature, I'm an classic overachiever. I truly feel like every addict out there, if they channeled their energy towards something positive, they
Mm.
could, be amazing. I know that that same drive, though, whenever used in self-destructive ways, which was for me as a teenager with drugs, it led to addiction. I was that child that never thought she would ever even try drugs, let alone or be friends with people that did drugs when she was a little girl, and the dare. Um, People
Right?
would come to school. Yeah. Like I
Yes.
won the essays. Like I was the winner of those. Like I was class president. Like people looked to me as a leader. So I was the last one that you would ever think would fall into something like that. But I got clean at 20 years old. So it was a 2 years hardcore. I went at it really hard, the drugs that I did. It began with, I'm not even going to call, I'm just going to say the harder ones. It began with cocaine and then led to meth. I was exposed to that and did that. And so I can say, I mean, it's taken me years to where I can just like speak freely about this, if you can
Yeah.
imagine, because there's a lot of shame associated with it, but I had to heal it. And I've faced my demons, I embraced my story. And now, my goal is to empower others, not just that are there, but maybe even that come out of it or have their own struggles to use their voice and transform their lives as I have. But so 2021, I was 36 years old. I had been clean from drugs since I was 20. I wrote my first book at 25. And then I buried the book because I knew I had a calling, but it was just so much for me. I wasn't ready to be that highest version of myself full time. I had a lot more trauma to heal, and I didn't even know what trauma meant when I wrote that first book. I never even said the word trauma in the entire 207 pages. Um, but yeah, so it was 2021, and I was looking for something else to achieve to prove that, like, I wasn't that, to be honest, to prove that I wasn't that girl that I felt like I was still ashamed of, that drug addict. I've got people from my hometown, like, I want to see them see me continue to exceed my family. It's just a constant chasing approval. I started making a lot of money in the mortgage business. I was doing well there. I got the husband. I was healthy enough to have a husband. I had the children. So I was like checking things off the list. And so when I first was pursued pageantry, it was another one of those like almost like a trauma response, like trying to get that approval and seek that achievement. But I really felt like I was called to it because God knew it was going to help heal me. It was going to help refine me. It was going to lead me to speaking, because at that time I couldn't even speak on social media, let alone be interviewed by you during a podcast and not like be crying the whole time. Yeah.
I'm glad not,
So,
because that would be an interesting interview.
oh my gosh. I mean, I did one. I did do one when I was I did a couple, and they're out there. Whenever I was Mrs. Tennessee American in 2021, talking about my story, all glammed up at the pageant, and I just couldn't help it. Like, I mean, it's beautiful in its own way, right? Because there's nothing wrong with any of the parts of myself, younger parts, and it was part of my journey. But I'm proud to have healed beyond that, to where I can talk about it and not get emotional. But almost it took that starting point of just talking about it where I was, even in tears, to then get to where I am now, where I can talk about it and not be emotional. But yeah, that's how I was led to pageantry at first. And then it kept me because of the healing. I say it unveils deeper layers of healing if you allow it. It shines a light on like our darker parts of ourselves, for me, like the comparison, the unworthiness. If they don't see me as a winner, then I'm not really worthy. So I had to heal a lot of those things, and I did. And so now it's just a version, it's like a form of expressing myself. And then, with my book, it's a way of getting my message out there. I have so much of a platform on my own with pageantry. I'm able to reach more people. It's a community that has kind of embraced me and would embrace anyone. That's the thing. This
Interesting.
community of women.
That's so interesting because I think you and I are a similar age. And so I can so remember, growing up and, Miss America and Miss USA and then being on stage and even like the Sandra Bullock movie, Miss Congeniality,
Uh-huh.
right? Like I have that image of that's what pageantry is. But then I also think shows like, um, I don't know, the one that Honey Boo Boo was on
Hmm.
LC. Like I feel like it showed kind of like darker under parts of
Hmm.
pageantry. And so it feels like, especially, the lead in I had of don't judge a book by its cover,
Hmm.
you're literally being judged.
You are.
That seems like such a challenging environment to put
Hmm.
yourself in, especially as you're healing.
Yeah, it was. I After my first pageant, I call it, I don't know if you use this terminology, like a dark night of the soul.
Yeah.
So I competed at the state pageant, and whenever I won Mrs. Tennessee American, before they crowned me, I was having backstage, it's cognitive dissonance or imposter syndrome. My body was literally rejecting this reality. It was like, you're not worthy, you're trashy, like they don't know who you really are, sort of thing. And so I experienced that. And then after only placing top 15 at Mrs. American, which the winner goes on to compete at Mrs. World, which is why it's so like a amazing that I actually get to go to Mrs. World now, because I didn't get to go through that avenue, but I'm going as Mrs. Italy. But it was a dark night of the soul for me. I was tying my worth to someone telling me I was worthy. And I spent a year, I actually got on medication for a season. It wasn't forever, but um, I I got on medication. I started doing like deep inner work. I actually met with like an energy, she studied Chinese energy medicine. So
Yeah.
I was like open to all kinds of things and got all kinds of healing, and had a podcast that helped heal me for a little while, because it was my way of using my voice and sharing my story in an audible way, not just the book way. But yes, it's like a friend said one time, it's like self-development in a pressure cooker. It's intense, and that's why I would never try to lead anyone to it. It's more like you need to be called to it, just because
Yeah.
of how it could be. If you're not someone that's strong enough to like face the darker parts of yourselves and figure out like how you're going to heal, how you're going to be better, it could like knock you over if you didn't have that support system that I have. I can only imagine if I didn't have my husband, if I didn't have those people in place, after I competed the second time, uh, where I was in my healing journey, how it would have gone. But actually, it was the one that had won. She spoke openly online, and this is how powerful the platform is, because you win and then people look up to you. And she spoke openly online about how she had went through a period of depression, and she got with her doctors. It was right after Chesley Chrisley. You remember, did you, the former Miss USA? She
Yeah.
passed away, and she talked about how she had feelings of depression and how she got on medicine. And that just kind of gave me the green light, because I always like was against it, like I was trying to do things on my own. And I honestly feel like that might have even, saved my life to some degree, at least saved my sanity while I'm living here on earth, saved my marriage. It did something in the way of saving me. And it was because of her speaking openly about that. So that's my connection to pageantry, is the women that have come in my life and have influenced me, and how after you've done drugs, it's like a self-inflicted trauma that you've done to yourself. And you feel a little rough around the edges. And so pageantry for me is really just brought out my true self, my true nature, brought me back home to myself, which wasn't all those things that I thought that I was, but that you kind of takes over whenever you're in that loop of self-destructive behaviors, whether it's being with abusive partners, which I also was in that loop, whether it's drug addiction, whether it's self-harm, or eating disorders, or what all the different things that we can do to ourselves that
Yeah,
make us feel worse.
they kind of go hand in hand, don't they? Like
Hmm.
it seems like when you start with one, then there's always another, and there's
Hmm.
that negative feedback loop that you're like, you feel
Hmm.
crappy for doing one, and so then the other one makes you feel crappy, and it
Yep.
validates that you're crappy, and then you're like, okay, well, I guess I'm crappy.
Yeah.
It's
It's
so
like
crazy.
it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, and I believe it all originates with trauma, and then we feel bad about ourselves, and that's the thought, and then that's that thought that you keep on recreating is, I'm defective, I'm unworthy,
Yeah.
you know.
I know you've got young kids. Have you seen any of the Inside Out movies?
Okay, so I need to work on this, being able to focus during a movie. But we have sat and watched it with my husband was like, if you really watch this, Celia, you're gonna cry. Like, I cry about things. And he's like, if you give this a chance, you're gonna cry. So my children have seen it. I've sat through it, but did I actually retain it, or was I on my phone? Don't know.
That's totally
So tell
fine.
me,
That's
inspire me, make me watch it.
I cry. I cry in movies. I actually took my kids to the movies last night, and I cried through The Wild Robot. So if you're a crier, it's
Okay, watch
gonna
that one.
happen in that one, especially if you've got sons. Like the mother-son relationship through that was just
Oh,
so touching. But
yeah.
I loved how in Inside Out, both one and two, how they kind of explained like the concept of toxic positivity.
Mm-hmm.
We're just going to be sunshine and rainbows all the time. Like that was really in the first one where the emotion of joy wouldn't let the emotion of sadness also be there.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the second one, they introduced anxiety and
Mm-hmm.
how anxiety can get in there. And I think anxiety is something that a lot of high performers have as maybe that, hamster in the wheel
Mm-hmm.
sort of situation driving behind the scenes. So I love that there's now more accessibility to it in our
Mm-hmm.
culture and that our kids are getting to see this. I feel like I mean, and maybe this is true for you as well, but I know that I think my kids are going to have such, and I already can see it, they have such better emotional intelligence than most adults I know.
Yeah. Our little neighbor was over the other day, and my son was like, "Oh, this is my book, my mommy's book," because I had a box of them. He was like, "She's on TV today. It's about trauma and helping people." My 5-year-old, and I
Oh,
said, "Preston, what is trauma? What is trauma?" And he said, "It means you've had a really bad day." And I was like, "Well, it's pretty good for a 5-year-old."
oh, I love that. I
He
love
needed the word
that.
trauma. I'm like, I didn't start using that word till maybe a few years ago.
Most people didn't, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
Or I think people always associated it with big T trauma.
Yes. Yeah.
That it had to be this like big awful thing that we went through rather than just there's all the little T traumas
Hmm. Yeah.
that can add up and really, really affect our day. But so all
Yeah.
of this, you wrote your first book, but then you've
Hmm.
just written a second book that's come out, which I love the title of. You Are a Queen, Transform Your Pain into
Hmm.
Power. And
Hmm.
I think that's such a beautiful thought. Like I've heard the phrase, your mess is your message.
Hmm.
That ties so well into transform your pain into power. Like whatever it is that you have to go through. And I know you're spiritual and have a strong faith as well. And so
Hmm.
I like to think of it as, when people are going through those dark nights of the soul, thinking, why has God abandoned me? And I think my interpretation of it is how much he loves us to let us go through this pain to get to the other side.
Mm-hmm.
That
100%.
resonate with you?
It does. And I also, so before I ever knew that there was a term called cognitive reframing, I kind of like went through all these things and then studied it and found out like there was psychology terms to go along with it. So cognitive reframing is what I began to do in 2020, or when I was 25 in 2011. God basically let me know that like it all happened for a reason. And it was all for like this future that's now I'm living now, 12 years later, 14 years later. But it was like I was given a vision for the future that like he was going to use everything I'd ever gone through. And that the reason why I went through it is because I was going to be strong enough to live through that. Whether that was truly God telling me that, or that was my body's ability to heal itself on its own, which is known as cognitive reframing, where you reframe a situation that was negative into a positive and it like brings you more peace.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, but I naturally just did that. But I really feel like, obviously it was God. But when I say that, I don't want to trigger people. I want people to know like they all have access to God. Like my socials, Love Waits for You is my Instagram. And it's about like God waits for you to come home to yourself. Love is God to me. And we all have access to whatever it is to you, whatever you want to call it. But it's like here, it's not in church, it's divine and it's within us. And yeah, so yes, that resonates with me 100%. And there's also this saying, your path was harder because your calling was higher.
Mm-hmm.
And you see that all the books that I read and the people that are most influential to me, they've all gone through something like really hard and overcome it. There's not really anybody that I pay attention to that grabs my attention that hasn't gone through something and overcome it.
But that's the trick. It's the
Mhm.
overcoming, right? Because who
Yeah.
hasn't gone through something hard?
Yeah, that's true. It's the overcoming. Like all these people that are drug addicts out there, like that's, not to judge them because you don't know, like if they heal, like who they could be. And what I see that they could be is I see myself. I see the drive and I see if you just channel it somewhere else. But it's a hard path. I'm not going to lie. It's not easy
Right.
to recover whenever you've done that to your body and you've done it to your mind for so long.
Yeah, changing all of that chemical,
Hmm.
but you can come back from it. And I
Hmm.
love that you're talking about it and letting people know and giving them hope that this is possible for them.
Right. And I won't say it's comfortable, especially whenever you're setting yourself to be judged in pageants. I feel like it's probably a new thing. Or it's not probably a new thing, but it's a new thing that it's being talked about. Like that there's a girl walking in that's interviewing for a pageant that's like, this is part of my journey. This is part of my story. It's not comfortable, but it's necessary. And I know it. And this isn't like I was called to do this a year ago. I was called to do it in 2011 when I wrote my first book. So it's been a long time coming that I've been able to like do this in this kind of way. It's been on my heart for many years and I'm finally here. And it's just every day I'm so thankful, which is the highest frequency there is gratitude. Well, I think maybe there's
Love.
enlightenment that might be higher, but
Yeah, when we look at the map of consciousness, the David
yeah.
R. Hawkins
Yeah.
scale.
Yeah. I mean, like, so I stay in a constant state of gratitude just from having lived that. And that's for anybody's future that overcomes.
Yeah, I think to be able to see where the path could have led had you stayed on that, had you kept that pattern of thought, had you kept that pattern of feeling, had you kept that pattern of behavior.
Hmm.
But that's all a choice.
Yeah. I'd like to say that part of my healing journey was to take full accountability and ditch the victim mentality. That was like first step for me personally. Everybody's journey is different. And then I kind of had to go back and, okay, I've already taken accountability. I've gotten myself out of it. I see what part I played. And I'm talking about from the drugs to also the abusive relationships I was in. I'm not going to sit here and say that I deserved it, but what part did I play by looking at them to tell me my worth? And then whenever they would be abusive, I still stayed. That tells them that it's okay. And this is not to say that I wasn't a victim and that I deserved it. But to overcome that loop, you have to look at those things. You have to no longer like play that role as the victim, but then to heal the trauma, you have to then go back and look at that it wasn't your fault. I did drugs because of the trauma that had happened to me. And that was my nervous system's way of surviving. Like, actually, thank you, little Celia, for keeping me here and not having me leave this earth and using the only tools available to you that you thought of at the time.
Oh, that's
So,
such a good way to put it. I
yeah.
mean, all the versions of us are still within us,
Mm-hmm.
and they were there for a reason at that time, for whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, having gratitude for those littler,
I
you know,
know.
versions of
It's
ourselves.
it's either that or live in shame, which I did for many years of like being like, why did you do that? Like I'm dealing with like all this shame over the like, why did you make those mistakes? Like what's worse, beating her up or finally just like accepting her and loving her and being like, you did the best you could. That was freeing to me is to get to that point.
Yeah, and I think that's a place where a lot of people are coming to. I saw a reel on Instagram just today that I shared in my stories, which was something along the lines of it was a little girl and this big shadow monster next, across from her. And it was like, you don't run from the shadows, from that darkness that you're afraid of. Talk to it.
Mm-hmm.
Ask it questions, help to understand it. Because when you understand something, you no longer fear it.
Yeah.
And I feel like that resonates so much with what you've been describing today
Mm-hmm.
and sharing with us and your journey and what you're writing down. But I do have a question that I just have to ask. And that is now as you're going from Tennessee to Italy to now world. I mean, those are some definite changes and stages.
Mm-hmm.
Are you finding new areas to heal as you go through this new growth and evolution?
I think it's the same things, but I'm focusing more because all the other ones I've healed. So now I'm focusing on the same things that have always been there. Like for me right now, it's comparison. And I've been doing that the whole time, but because I was so focused on the larger things, which is the unworthiness for me, I finally healed that to where I could win or lose, and I'm going to walk away knowing that that doesn't just detract from my worth. Like I'm still worthy. That was a huge healing point. So now that I'm there with that, it's really just comparison and trying to get to this place where actively playing a role in my healing that I can be amazing, someone else can be amazing, and I know they're amazing. It's not that I struggle with that, but because they're amazing, it doesn't make me any less.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's probably what I'm working on in this season is that it not to feel any sort of like insecurity because someone else is also, and I don't want anybody to feel that about me. Like you're still just as amazing. It's just, and it's all, I mean, I am setting myself up to be in those situations where I would be tempted to compare myself. But I've also learned, I don't look at people's stories I'm competing with. I wait till the week of pageantry. I always come back with friends. They're all going to get a copy of my book. But just for my mental health and where I'm at right now, I don't study competition. And I feel like, I wish that other women can get to that place in their journeys to do that because it's not really healthy.
No, and that can be in any area of our life, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
I know I used to compare myself to the moms that were through like amazing birthday parties
Uh-huh.
because that's just not me. Like we had one birthday party where the theme was blue. Things were
Yeah.
just blue, and that's as much as I could muster in that moment in time. And then we go to other birthday parties where there was like themes and there was different areas in the house to play in, and it was incredible. And I can remember very clearly the first time that I was just like, this lady is amazing. Like, I love that she loves doing this, and I get to come
Mhm.
and benefit from it without being like, oh, I guess I can't invite her kid to my birthday party because it's going to be so much not like this.
Yeah. Like there's like two versions of ourselves as we heal. Like one is like that, and then you got to this place where it's like you can just appreciate them for like being blessed in that area that we're not.
Exactly, exactly. And I don't know, it always feels like such a like the healing journey just feels like a remembering of how awesome we are
Hmm. Yeah.
versus, it's just that it's shedding all of that not us and being like,
Yeah.
hey, I'm pretty great.
Hmm.
And there's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with saying that? Like, there was also just a moment in time of just, oh, being like the conceited, stuck up girl, like, oh,
Hmm.
they're all that in a bag of chips. Remember that phrase?
Yeah. Hmm.
Um,
Yeah,
so it's just such an interesting balance to find that kind of line through it.
definitely. I'll say pageantry helped me with that too, because haven't figured out where it stemmed from, but I definitely had this like not only issue with feeling like enough, but like this issue or resistance to letting people like know that I thought I was enough. Like I felt like
Mhm.
I wasn't allowed to like actually believe that I was enough to other people. So pageantry helped me break that because they're like, you've got to walk on stage and actually that like this is the if there's never a time that you're supposed to like truly be confident and show your confidence and belief in yourself, like this is your green light. And I remember like that was so hard for me to do at first, but the first time I walked on stage in an evening gown, I remember my husband like got emotional because to just see me, it was almost like he was like, it was like you were in your element. And like I never saw you soar like that. He was like, you were like floating. And it was like this empowering moment of just allowing myself to be seen and to shine, and that it was okay and it wasn't wrong. And I don't know where, at what point, I think a lot of women may have been taught either by society or felt that like they're supposed to dim their light or they're not supposed to. Are we supposed to, but
No.
pageantry helped me do that.
Oh, that's so beautiful.
Mhm.
Oh, well, I've really enjoyed this conversation.
Yes, it's
And
flown by.
it has flown by. And I feel like there are versions of Catryn that would have been like, oh my gosh, a pageant winner, pageant queen wants to be on. Like, I can't compete with that. But it's not about competing. And I
Right.
had such an amazing time. So my last question for you is there another book? Like, do you feel like there's more that you want to share?
Absolutely. It's going to be something along the lines of, I write books that help me heal. And since I believe, some like Christians might call it, we're the body of Christ, like we know that there's a collective, like, we're all one in a lot of ways. We're all part
Mhm.
of the same one. So when I write books that help me heal, it's not a shock that I get messages from other people that it's helping them heal. So my next book that's going to help me heal, it's going to be something along the lines of, you know, who am I if I'm not pretty? And it's not going to say that. But it's going to be something like what happens. It's going to be, and my husband's helping me with this too, actually, because he's like, it's not just about looks, it's about like the age. There's something in the letting go and allowing ourselves to age and to lose. It's not just about the looks. So I'm giving you bare bones, like, don't judge me. I'm not going to name it. Who am I if I'm not pretty? But really, like, who are we without our looks? Who are we without our youth? Like this going into it's like a graceful letting go that
Yeah.
is like, I told my therapist a while back that I was like, a part of me just wants to get on the floor and just like grieve this like growing older thing. Like there's just like these emotions that she's like, then you just need to do that. Like I just want to kick and scream, like I'm like, I don't want to do it.
But
But it's something I know a lot of women deal with. And even my husband had a birthday this weekend and like it's not the happiest time for him anymore. He turned 43.
well,
So it's
it's it's the end. So, had a good run. Thanks for playing.
I know. But it's something, that we deal with or else we wouldn't do the things to our face I'm not that say that you do, but I'll admit that that like if I was really comfortable with it and I say I don't want to heal I tell God, I'm like, I don't want to heal too much that I'll just let myself go. But I want to heal enough to where, I don't want to age 10 years in a month because I stopped, having like doing Botox or anything. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Because
no, I know what you
yeah.
mean, and I think um like Pamela Anderson, she
Hmm.
has really put a spotlight on this issue of just showing up to events without makeup.
Hmm.
And everyone was shocked, like, oh my God, she's not wearing makeup. And it's like, this is my face. This is what I look like. Like,
Yeah.
get on board or goodbye.
Yeah. I I would say that might be me finding peace if I was an older person, if I was Pamela Anderson being objectified, having that. It's like I already proved my worth as a good-looking woman. I already did
Yeah.
that. Now
Check
I'm
that
just going to be
box.
me.
Yeah. Now we get to go into that like wise woman area.
Uh-huh.
Just not giving a crap, just
Yeah.
saying what's on our mind, just like truly being ourselves.
Yeah.
I'm here for that, I must
I,
say.
yeah. This is content for my book. This is going to help me.
We can chat and just brainstorm. It'll be fabulous.
Yeah. Yeah.
Celia, I have enjoyed this so very much. Please share how people can get in touch with you because I know from hearing this conversation, they're going to be like, I need more of what she's got.
Love it. So my Instagram is at Love Waits for You, and on there it has like a link to my website, CeliaAnzaloneBowers.com. So that'd be the easiest thing to know to get me. It also has a link to my mortgage business if you need a mortgage. I have the ability to be licensed in all 50 states if I'm not already in the one that you live in, and it has a link to my mortgage page on there as well, Celia Lynn's TN. But Love Waits for You. That's how you find me on
Oh,
Instagram.
that's so beautiful. We could have a whole nother conversation just about the mortgage side of
Oh
things. I'm sorry we
gosh.
didn't talk
Oh
about.
yeah. No. This is what I want to talk about.
No, then that's perfect. That's perfect.
Yes.
Well, thank you again so very much for being here.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
And to the audience, thank you guys so much for being here. I know you felt the same way that we felt. We can't be the only ones feeling this. So please make sure to send us comments. We love reading those. If this resonated with you, share it with your friends. Make sure to like and subscribe to get notified of more amazing content like this. Until next time, everyone, take care.